Hi, everybody. My name is Manuel. I'm an architect from Belgium, and I'm one of the co-founder of the architectural office Tromnovel. So, Tromnovel is what we like to call a militant faction of architecture. At Tromnovel, we use architecture and fiction as analytical, critical, and subversive tools to emphasize contemporary issues and dissect their resolutions. Tromnovel alternates between cynicism and enthusiasm, all the while advocating for critical thinking in architecture. Tromnovel champions a multidisciplinary approach with architecture at the crossroads. Tromnovel distances itself from current form of naive architecture and refuses to glorify the mundane. Tromnovel sides with those who have not sacrificed ambition and criticism. Tromnovel was founded in 2015 by Léon Drapeau, Johnny Leia, and myself. We were students at La Cambre in Brussels, and we consider Tromnovel to be a critical tool at the service of society. Alles ist Architektur. This quote is from a 1968 publication by Hans Hollein in Bau magazine, in which he proclaims that everything which constitutes the physical world can be considered as architecture. Architecture must be freed from buildings, he says. In this 30 pages manifesto, comprising a selection of images and different scale, reminiscent of landscape or building, and a short paragraph of text, Hollein invited us, readers, to extend their understanding of architecture. Everything is architecture. In turn, we proclaim that everything is fiction. One of the preconceptions that we have inherited from the modern movement is that fictions draw us away from the more noble quest for truth. This idea of a hegemonic truth has been contradicted by many fields, including sciences, yet the concept of truth is upheld by the idea of rationality, which is reassuring illusion to architects. We believe that the role of the architect, beyond creating spaces to serve the society, is to represent, criticize, and ultimately offer alternate fictions to the ones which form the basis of our societies. Everything is fiction. So, let's begin with some etymology. The word fiction derives from the Latin verb fixio, which means handle, touch, caress, compose, curl, shape, feign, pretend, invent, picture, and imagine. Fiction is present at every step of a project making. Every thought emerges from a particular individual's mind bearing the fictions of their culture and societies. The users, in turn, will appropriate the space and layer it with their own fiction. Okay, it's fine. So, in 1911, German philosopher Hans Vaihinger published this Philosophie des Als Ob, the philosophy of as if, in which he shows that fiction is an operative tool used by all fields of investigation, and in particular mathematics and most scientific reasonings. Vaihinger, as if philosophy, states that human beings, not knowing the underlying truths of the world, we construct systems of thought and then assume that these match reality. He even states that we can only perceive those phenomena of which we have mastered the fictions. We behave as if the world matches our models. Strong admirer of mathematics, Vaihinger uses mostly references to mathematics and physics, but he also refers to this syllogism. All men are mortal, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal. We attribute to this unique case, Socrates, a fictional filter of analysis. men. This category is a construction. There exists no general man, saying, as all men are individuals. This syllogism leads to a truth, which is that Socrates is mortal. According to Weinger, fictions bear a positive role because they contribute to identifying the truth. Fiction are operative tools. Everything is fiction. This building is one of the emblems of architectural history, the Athenian Parthenon. It is considered to be one of the founding buildings of our architectural culture, although research led on the Sumerian people contradict this. Here you see the very essence of the wide purity of European architecture, despite the fact that it was probably painted very vividly. This building is a temple dedicated to the goddess Athena. So most of us probably agree that Athena is one of the constitutive fictions of ancient Greece. At that time, the Olympus gods were considered a general truth and largely uncontested. When we use the word fiction, we are tempted to associate with it terms such as dishonesty, lie, or deceptions, which in turn question the authenticity of a work. In that sense, it is interesting to remind ourselves that Greek temples were the stone abstraction of historical wooden temple. So this is La Mezquita de Córdoba in the southern Spain. It was first a Visigoth church, which was then divided in two halves to be shared with Muslims. It was then purchased by an emir and became solely a mosque until a cathedral was constructed inside and became solely Catholic. This building has been invested with numerous truths which cohabited and accommodated to the space. Another building testifying such an imbrication of belief is the Roman Pantheon. This antique building was first a pagan temple, then a Catholic church, and now a temple to mass tourism. Every architecture is constructed through fiction, and its contradiction, the Pantheon, is one of those buildings which is suited to accommodating various stories and contributing to write new ones. Bruno Latour is one of the thinkers of sociology, of scientific knowledge, which deal with social condition and effect of science, and with the social structure and processes of scientific activity. To put things differently, we could say that it aims at reasserting the myth behind scientific processes. In 1991, book We Have Never Been Modern, Latour questioned the differences between pre-modern people and modernity, which assumes nature and culture as two opposing and contradictory forces. According to Latour, this rationality of science not only doesn't exist, but rather fiction and experiments are the founding elements of science. The first of our modern fiction is that of progress, which supposedly eases humanity toward a better future. Thanks to Latour and other cultural studies, we now know that there is no universal truth. Each culture develops its own stories, its own myth, that we should strive to identify and question. Humans are cultural animals, and architecture is a cultural product. The People's Halls is an unrealized project by the Nazi Third Reich architect Albert Speer. Its aim was to inscribe Germania in the long course of history. For this, Speer put forward his theory of ruins, asserting that even thousands of years after the collapse of the Reich, these buildings will testify to the greatness of this empire. This project belonged to a long tradition of nascent nations. Invent their story, invent their fictions. In order to write this fiction, Speer draws his inspiration from classical architecture, almost as if a few columns were enough to bring to life an eternal people. The Slovenian philosopher Slavoj Zizek, in his perverted guide to ideology, used Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, the Ode to Joy, to illustrate which have supported very different contradictory fiction. Ode to Joy was played at Hitler's birthday, as well as during communist rallies. Today, it is the official hymn of the EU, and was lately used at Emmanuel Macron's investiture. According to Zizek, this piece bears this because it withholds a deep contradiction of its own, embodied by a Turkish march, which appears at the end of the piece. For us, classical architecture has the same power as Beethoven's Turkish march. It embodies the hope and dream of authoritarian regime from both extremes, as well as democratic ideas. Architecture is colored by this value. It is an evolving fiction. The Danteum. The Danteum is a fascinating building. It is a monument dedicated to the Italian poet Dante Alighieri, designed by Giuseppe Terragni for Rome World Fair in 1942. Its ambition was to promote the grandeur of Mussolini's new fascist nation. The Italian radical were the architect at Mussolini's service, and they too refer to the classical architecture, as well as fiction and myth, they construct the Italy Mussolini dreamed. Terragni's project relates Dante's Divine Comedy. The visitor follows the route from hell to heaven through the geometric composition of the space. Terragni transposed the poem into sequences, rhythm, and proportion. It is not an illustration of the poem, it is the poem. Casa del Fascio. As opposed to Speer architecture, entangled with grandiose, the Italian radical architecture is most specifically destined to hosting crowds, and not the abstraction of a crowd. The Casa del Fascio, constructed in 1936 by Terragni, was the headquarters of the fascist party in the small city of Como, in northern Italy. It draws its references from Palazzo Farnese, a Roman palace from the Renaissance, which is remarkable for its use of three orders vertically along the facade as a progression from heavy to light. Casa del Fascio references both historical building to narrate a common history for Italy and offers an interpretation through architecture of a transparent regime, open to its people. The facade, like the plan with their system of emptiness, testify to this openness. In the background is the powerful fascist fiction, a new man freed from his chain in a unified new Italian nation. Well, leaving the realm of epicness and back to a fiction, which is closer to home to us, but should also sound familiar to you. The fiction of the Belgian nation. This is not the story of the creation of a small country which nearly 200 years on is still structured around the monarch, but one of the question of the reconstruction of its city after the World War I. That book, the book Resurgam, published in 1985, sheds light upon the moment of reconstruction during which Belgium invented a new myth for itself, that of the bourgeois mansion. Although it was an uncharacteristic housing typology, it was used as a founding block for new urban developments, the result of which is the Flemish-style pitched roof house. The reconstruction of a nation is a difficult task. in that it requires the creation of a new and artificial identity based on historical myth. This project proposes the creation of a new boulevard in Brussels. It is a characteristic project of the movement known as Arrow, which is an architectural movement from the 80s. Its members rose to oppose the so-called destruction of the historical fabric of the city. They propose a project as a manifesto for continuing the construction of European cities based on the typology of bourgeois housing with the aim of making cities more human. Their urban model refers to undefined dreams for a traditional, authentic, anti-modern and peaceful city. One of their leading thinkers, Léon Krier, indeed contributed to this dream by building a few residential suburbs in the United States. On the surface, they oppose the international and transversal ideals of the modern movement by referring to the fictional of small medieval bourgeois towns. Though the modern fiction were not challenged, merely camouflaged behind the cute brick facade. The garden cities. Along the line of urban fictions, the garden city, which was implemented in Belgium following Ebenezer Howard's theories, opposes the model of the industrial city, mother of all vices. The garden city offers a retreat in the countryside for working-class family. Not in the form of an autarcic retreat, but rather as a community organized around the civic center. Consequently, the garden city model was very soon stifled in Belgium on the basis of the fears of the emergence of communist worker community, otherwise named red suburbs. Atlantropa. These fictions are not only expressed through architectural objects, but are also embodied in landscapes, city and territorial planning. Atlantropa was presented for the first time by German architect Hermann Zörgel in the 1920s. This unrealized plan projected the construction of several massive dams across the Mediterranean seas, resulting in the significant lowering of sea level, thus creating new arable land for agriculture and allowing increased connection between Europe and Africa. The project planned on installing various large-scale infrastructure connecting the two continents, hence facilitating trade. This project is a fiction, the fiction of two united continents. It is fascinating in the fact that it depicts an alternative future. It opens new lands of investigation and contests what we take for granted in international relations. Across the Atlantic, Jefferson developed his grid system in 1796. Architect and President of the United States, Thomas Jefferson imagined a territorial management tool which reflected with this new nation's democratic ideals. Jefferson grid is applied all over the US landscape and increases upon in the principle of equality because the grid, according to Jefferson, makes each point equal to all others. This grid system is tangible in many American cities and still support the discourse of the American dream, equality of chances. However, the grid system can also convey the complementary values of total control and alienation through extreme rationalization. The exact same territorial typology expresses in China radically different values. The grid creates a hierarchy upon the emperor's territory by emanating from its center, the Imperial Palace of Beijing. Each point is measured in relation to its distance from the center. The grid, like any model, is a fiction. Alles is fiction, everything is fiction, there is no universal truth. Architecture is a cultural act and as such conveys its own fictions. Fiction is an operative device which allows us to question contemporaneity. And it's the constructive device allowing to impact our culture. It allows to be aware of the cultural framework in which action and idea takes place. Everything is architecture. Today, the story that we wanted to share with you is called Eurotopy and was presented for the first time in the Belgian pavilion at the Architecture Biennale in Venice last year. This project strives to create a common ambition for Europe. It is the story of the discovery of a new land, which seems to stretch from the Ural Mountain to the Atlantic Ocean. It has existed for millennia and will probably outlive us. Sometimes called continent, sometimes peninsula, and its boundaries are undefined. Sometimes questioned, it has also sparkled remarkable face. We have called this place Eurotopy. We consider its main embodiment in Brussels, historically named Quartier Léopold, but sometimes also called the EU neighborhood. An important journey is never achieved alone. We were accompanied by a multidisciplinary team in order to interrogate this new territory and also be able to find the way to show it to you. From this journey in Eurotopy, there was an art historian, Roxane Legrel, a photographer, Philippe Braconnier, an artist, Claire Trottignon, a graphic designer, Jürgen Mayfeld, a researcher, Denis Paul, a philosopher and writer, Bruce Bégou, and last but not least, an artistic director, Sébastien Lacomblé. To each of these contributors, we asked to give form through their own media, to their own understanding of Eurotopy. Eurotopy is not a hegemonic view of alternative Europe. Rather, it is an intricate, ornate, perhaps even contradictory sum of tales. It aims at conveying optimist yet multifaceted ideals. It is not a full-fledged, coherent political proposal. It is a message of hope and an invitation to get involved. As a preliminary investigation, we wrote an architectural manifesto, which proposed to learn from the architecture of the European neighborhood, as well as to highlight its intrinsicality and positive value. We use the EU Quarter as a metonymia, according to which the space of the European neighborhood can be read as the representation of European politics. We identified 7 key characteristics to the EU neighborhood, which can be used as a tool to advance the construction of Europe in all senses. This Eurocode 7 was delivered to all of the contributors, and the architecture and ideals which it put forth serve as the basis for their interpretation of Eurotopy. So, the first one, Sébastien Lacomblé. The less visible but broadest of the contributors was that of Sébastien Lacomblé. Sébastien was the artistic director of the operation. He brought forth some of the key concepts of the project, such as the idea of optimization of the real, which took its root for us in the idea that Europe already exists as a political and cultural identity. So, rather than dropping it to try to imagine alternative way of coming together, Europe, as it's imperfect, but offer a framework to develop and build upon it. It is an incomplete project that should be continued. He put this idea into practice when we asked him to compose a piece of music for the pavilion, which would testify to the power of the European project. Rising from the ground, a piece of music was recomposed from the core of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, creating a new ode to joy. This soundtrack was completely site-specific. It was composed with the space itself, using its echoes, its vibration, and varied qualities of subspaces, but most of all, it was composed by each individual visitor of the space, who recompose it depending on their movement and location. The graphic designer, Jürgen Mahlfeld, invents the graphic identity of this new Europe for the travel diary Voyage to Eurotopie, which collects the various fiction. In line with this idea of optimization of the real, he subverted to existing graphic code, the flag but also the graphic identity embodied in two fonts used by the EU, Arial and Times New Roman. And he applied a very simple gesture, a 10 degrees inclination to the right. Symbolically, this gesture implies movement toward the future. The journey to Eurotopie. It was important to us to make our optimistic and ambitious discourse extremely legible as to our view of Europe and the EU Quarter. Philosopher and author Bruce Begout wrote a short story, a fiction, narrating the genesis of a new Europe following a violent conflict between pro-European supranationalists and united nationalists. The conflict is used merely as a plot device to open readers to radical change. Begout then describes the journey to Brussels of a new European deputy, selected by random drawing amongst all European citizens. Finga Molinar, a middle-aged housewife, discovered the EU neighborhood as well as the new institution of an ambitious and democratic Europe. There is no tabula rasa, but rather a subtle shift from old to new, where the new Europe is built upon the European Union of today. Claire Trottignon's work focused on requalifying and changing the viewer perception of emblematic spaces of the EU Quarter. Here, the facade of the European Parliament on Place du Luxembourg is decomposed and opened the interior of the machine institution. She also draws attention to the existing relief of the Malbec Valley, which separates the Parliament from the other two principal institutions. Leopold Park, which is a historical park, bears the traces of a disappearing small river, and its surprising height difference are entirely dwarfed by the adjacent infrastructure. Claire's work shed on a new light on existing spaces, and her fiction invited us to see them differently. This is a photograph of the same Parliament building, but by Philippe Bracquenier, taken from the park. The European Union is a supranational organization which comprises 28 nation-states, 510 million inhabitants, 60 years of shared history as well as number of political, social, commercial, territorial, humanitarian, judiciary, agricultural, monetary, energetic, and military agreements. However, it is also 50,000 public servants who occupied 865,000 square meters of office in 61 different buildings. In a neighborhood that sprung up and planned on the impulse of speculators and investors. 3 legislative and executive organs, as well as parallel activities, included the highest numbers of lobbies in the world behind Washington, which is what political journalists refer to as Brussels. That is the Brussels that Philippe has photographed. Yet, he was searching for the poetry, the surprises, the symbols, and even the violence. He also tried to show another perception to the narrative behind the EU neighborhoods. seemingly smooth surface and postmodern monolith. To convince the cultural world of the existence of the distant land, Eurotopy, we decided to bring to Venice the pavilion of Eurotopy. It was built as a synthesis of our expedition. It is a space, and only a space, representing the world that already exists. Inside the circular blue agora represent the embodiment of a new system within the existing structure. It stands empty, but as a container, it is destined to host multiple uses and exploration. Eurotopy in Venice was just the first step of a project that we hope to continue. For us, Eurotopy is the last utopia, an utopia not constructed on an isolated island, but it deals with existing symbols. Eurotopy embodies an emancipatory project, the only narrative that is able to counter nationalism. Eurotopy strives to repoliticize our world and invites architects to take part in its construction. Welcome to Eurotopy. Thank you.